real stories of werewolves of Dogman history from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Werewolf Saved Me from Falling. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I might have had the strangest dogman or real werewolf encounter of all time, and I haven't told it yet publicly. For years I considered writing a book about it. It would have been this self-help and poetry kind of a book because I used to be into self-help and poetry. It was about the life lesson I almost didn't live to learn. I would have gone down to an early grave if that dogman creature hadn't been there. He saved my life, and I came away from it a different person. I was never really the girl I had been before, whether for better or worse. I came out of that experience a grown-up. Life got really serious, really fast. So I had been a party girl and I was a romantic too. I was dating a rich guy, but I wasn't after his money. Not exactly, anyway. I didn't want to marry, divorce, and take the house. I just thought we were in love. I thought it was a mutual thing. Yeah, he was rich and I loved the lifestyle of being with him, but I also believed in the lyrics of love songs from back in those days. These days, I think they only are allowed to write breakup songs, but my generation got pounded with music about being in love, and that was all I ever really wanted to be. In love. With a rich guy, yeah, but still, love, 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 baby. My boyfriend is still alive and he's still quite litigious, so I can't use his real name. Let's call him Beavis because he was quite a butthead to me. So Beavis invited me to a big camping party thing one time, and I figured he was going to propose to me while we were there. I forget why I thought that. Oh right, one of his friends had recently proposed marriage to a girl I sorta knew, and they did it at some big multi-day festival. This was some kind of multi-day rave kind of thing, I think, and I think I got the idea from there. I was in a very romantic mood on the drive to the place. This was a party being held in the woods in Devil's Lake State Park, which is located way up the hill from Devil's Lake. And when I say up the hill, I really mean up a sheer mountain that surrounds the lake. I don't know if this rave was legal or if they had any permits. I just know it was near to Cleopatra's Needle, which is what they call this natural formation over there near the spot where I almost lost my life. When it was still somewhat light out, a bunch of us, like maybe 5 or 6, wandered over to show me and this other girl what Cleopatra's Needle looked like. I had seen the one in New York City, which has hieroglyphics on it and is actually from Egypt. This one was a tall stone sticking up over the edge of the cliff. I almost got vertigo being there. It sure was a long fall down if you weren't careful. I was usually a careful person in those days. So that night at the party or rave or whatever you want to call it, I was having a lot of fun and I was flying. My boyfriend and I got really close inside somebody's tent, and I felt like I could never love anyone as much as I loved that guy. When we were done, I told him I loved him, and that I wanted to get married. I just blurted it out. I didn't think before I said it. Well, that creep broke up with me before he even got his clothes back on. He was out of that tent so fast you would have thought it was on fire. Never tell a guy that you love him, unless he says it first. And even then, get it in writing, ladies. A little life advice from this old crone. Another bit of advice is never let yourself get down over a breakup. I know that's hard to do, since it can hurt, even if the breakup was your idea. But you just need to make a rule with yourself that you're not allowed to get down when someone just dumped you. I also don't allow myself to get down when I'm hungry or very tired. It's just rules I set up for myself. I have a right to pretend nothing is wrong for a while under those conditions. Hungry, tired, or recently kicked to the curb by your significant other. But back then, I had no rules at all for my personal emotional protection. And when that guy dumped me, I launched into epic sad teenager mode. You know, that sort of Super Saiyan version of emo mixed with Kurt Cobain that a young woman can only achieve when she's been abandoned. I wish I could go back in time and give myself advice. Why haven't they invented time travel yet? Honestly, I wish I could have been old back then so that I could be young now. I'll tell you that much. It really is true that youth is wasted on the young. When my mom used to say that cliche to me, I wanted to punch her. But now I say it, and I want to punch me. So the long and short version of this tale is that I walked right over to the edge of the cliff, and then I kept going. No, I did not do it out of sadness, although the sadness is probably why I wasn't watching where I was going. This was not an attempt to self-delete. This was just a dumb young chick feeling sorry for herself and not watching where she was going. So I remember falling, with the wind blowing my dress up around me almost like a parachute. It almost felt like I was floating, as though I weren't really falling at all. I nearly stopped panicking, but then I glanced to my side and saw how fast the rock wall next to me was flying upward. I wasn't just falling, I was plummeting. I wasn't going to be around here much longer. I had seriously messed up. I want to say that great insights came to me on the way down, and that my entire life flashed before my eyes like in the movies. I mean, I want to say that, but actually I screamed and panicked and kicked and grabbed for something, anything, to stop my fall. I had already worn myself out and I was blacking out when something grabbed me. I thought I had gotten my clothing stuck on a rock, but then a warm and furry hand almost as large as my entire midsection reached out and gently grabbed me around the front, pulling me in toward it. I remember thinking that I had actually passed on, that this was heaven, like, teddy bear heaven, where I lie in the lap of a giant teddy bear. I turned around and was a little surprised that the teddy bear had a dog face. But I wasn't really all that surprised. I was grateful to the bear or dog or wolfman or whatever he was. I had been expecting to meet St. Peter, but this guy looked more like St. Christopher. So like I was saying, I thanked the big monster, but not for saving my life. I thought my life was already over and that this was the afterlife. I was thanking this angelic being for giving me a soft landing. I was pretty much out of my head, but thankfully, the Dogman was very much inside his head, I mean. He carried me back up to the top of the cliff and placed me on the ground there. I could see exactly where I had walked off the edge, and I shuddered so hard I almost fell down again. So I was still alive. I reached out to grab the Dogman to celebrate, but he started snarling and snapping at my face. Surprised, I backed up a few steps and the Dogman's fierce expression, with his long, sharp teeth bared, toned down just a bit, to just sort of an angry grimace. And then he sighed heavily, and started climbing down. It looked like he couldn't wait to get away from me. And that was the second time a guy had backed away from me in 1 hour. I felt sorry for myself and I tried to cry, but I think the adrenaline was just pumping too hard. And so I watched him go and I just let it hurt. I let it hurt for a long time. From then on, I only went with guys who asked me first. I only went with guys who liked me more than I liked them. I know that's kind of a loser's solution, but I never claimed to be a world beater. I'm just an old lady, but I've lived a full life. Well, full enough. I learned young not to fill my cup to overflowing. And I learned that lesson when Werewolf saved me from falling. I hope you enjoyed that. That was the second story in our week of scary Dogman and werewolf camping stories. One of the key points of most of these kinds of witness reports is that if you're going to put yourself at risk out in nature, there is such a thing as safety in numbers. If you're camping alone, you're obviously far less safe than if you or your family or friends head out onto Dogman turf with this 16-person mansion of a tent. This cool 3-wing tent is on sale by mail from Walmart at $100 off. The link to snag one at that discounted price is in the description. If you use that link, then allegedly this channel gets a small commission for each sale. Don't go anywhere, we've got the story of Dogman coming up in a second, but first, you know who's great? That Julie Sadler. Put her in a boat and she's a paddler. Turn her to a snake and she's a rattler. Our executive producer, Julie Sadler. Please join us in thanking today's executive producer, Julie Sadler, for making this episode possible. In exchange, we share with her our secret Sunday uncensored episodes, stories far too wild to tell on this channel. Julie also gets access to our entire 21-hour archive of secret uncensored stories, and she gets to see our shows in advance of the public whenever possible. You can gain these and other perks too by either joining our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com or else by clicking the join link under this or any of our videos. We'll have more info at the very end of the show, but now let's jump into that second story we promised you. Dogman. chased me right off a cliff. Dear Scary Stories NYC. There was this time in my life when I lost everything, or so I thought. My wife left me, I lost my job, I lost my home, my wife took custody of my son. In my final session with my therapist, he told me I needed to find a way to relax. I went camping, since I could no longer afford any of the more expensive ways of relaxing, and I walked into the forest, hoping for some peace and quiet. Instead, the Dogman chased me right off a cliff. So here's how it happened. I was camping in the pictured Rocks Woods in northern Michigan. It's that part of Michigan over by Lake Superior that's actually attached to Wisconsin, but it's called Michigan anyway for some reason. They have beautiful cliffs overlooking the water over there, and there's a lot of nature to hike and camp in, elevated up in the woods on top of those cliffs. So that's where I was, in the woods on top of those cliffs at 3 or 4 in the morning, peeing onto the side of a tree. I was extremely groggy. I kept rubbing my eyes, but I kept seeing blurry. I wasn't sure I wanted to actually see what I was stepping on and through anyway, so I just stood there with my eyes closed, and I finished my business. Then I heard a sound that I didn't like over my right shoulder. It sure sounded like an angry animal to me. What kind of animal was that? A bear? No, not a bear. A cat? Closer to a cat, but no, maybe a very big cat. I prayed I was dreaming, and I was afraid to open my eyes. The growl turned to a snarl and grew louder. I began to wonder if I was dreaming those sounds. If it was a dream, then opening my eyes might end it. On the other hand, if it was a dream, I might open my eyes and see some impossible nightmare image that might give me a heart attack. I began to smell the odor of a large animal in the vicinity. It smelled like backstage at the zoo, a smell only the older of you out there will be able to remember anymore. Can you dream a smell? I don't know, maybe you can. I don't remember ever doing it though, so I was pretty sure that there was a big, real beast out in the night, and that he or she or it was unhappy with my presence peeing on that tree. Rather than flipping out as is the norm with me, I became extremely calm. I slowly, carefully, quietly finished my business, wrapping myself up, and thought silently about how I should go about my plan of getting back into my tent before being torn apart by whatever creature it was that I hadn't gotten the nerve up to open my eyes and look at yet. I made up my mind to move slowly and calmly no matter what kind of creature it might turn out to be. Even if I opened my eyes and I saw that it was King Kong, I was going to remain quiet and slowly remove myself from the situation. I repeated internally, I am calm in all situations and circumstances, over and over and over, as a mantra. Nothing in the world could cause me to panic. I was ready for the worst, and I was sticking with the plan. I braced myself for all potential possibilities I could imagine I would see when I opened my eyes. I thought I was prepared for anything. So then I opened my eyes and I looked in the direction I had heard the snarling coming from. At my eye level, I saw the fur-covered chest of a hairy monster man. Turning my gaze up, I saw that this gentleman was blessed with the head of some kind of prehistoric, yet intelligent wolf. Moving my eyes down, I saw that the fellow was a nudist. Of course, fur covered for him with clothing covered for me, so I was certainly not judging him. I could not yet make out his legs, but his arms did not appear either human or canine. His claws or hands looked like werewolf hands from an old horror movie. My brain took this information in and had no answer for me as to what I was looking at. My best guess at the time was that it was a wolf-headed werewolf. I know how stupid that sounds in retrospect, but
I hadn't seen any modern werewolf movies yet when this happened. To me, a werewolf was a guy made up to look like the old Lon Chaney Jr. pictures. This creature's head looked completely like a Stone Age wolf, a primitive, feral version of a dog. But it was standing up on its hind legs like a naked caveman. I'm not really sure what it was, but looking back on it, it could only have been the Dogman, right? I panicked. I screamed. I ran away, screeching like a 2-year-old. I completely forgot my plan and I panicked. That's all I can say. I'm not even going to try to defend myself. I'm not going to try to defend my manhood either, or my behavior. I wonder if I would have done the same thing if it had been a bear or a mountain lion. Well, maybe I would have run away, but I'm not sure they would have let me run so far as the Dogman did. I didn't run back to my camp and jump into my tent. I probably would have been safe then if I had. I've heard extremely few stories since then of a Dogman tearing its way into someone's tent. I think they respect those boundaries. Ripping up people in our tents and homes while we sleep would probably be going too far. Even if the authorities don't want to say these things are real, I think if Dogman started wiping out too many campers, I have a feeling the feds would move in and there would be a war. I don't think the Dogman want that. I think they're too smart for that. But I wasn't thinking clearly at all that night. I had seen the most terrifying creature that walks this planet Earth. I had smelled him. I had looked into his soulless, glowing eyes. And I was feeling fear, like I had never felt it before. I didn't even know where I was running. I was lost in the woods, almost before I even began. I ran wildly in the darkness. Sometimes it was hard to see. Other times the light of the moon poked through, and I had fairly clear night vision. One time I turned around hoping I had gotten away from the creature, only to see it pacing me, about 30 or 40 feet behind. It was in that moment that I saw it in full body for the first time. It was like a man, but its legs were like those of a dog. The hind legs of a dog, I mean. He ran on them in an upright human manner, but those legs looked like dog or wolf legs. This gave him a bit of the appearance of the ancient god Pan, humanoid on top, but animal underneath. I wondered for a brief instant if sightings of werewolves might have led to the invention of god forms like Pan or the devil, but then I remembered that neither of those archetypes had the heads of wolves. I was so out of breath that I wanted to lie down and pass out, yet I was so terrified and charged with adrenaline that I kept running anyway. I think if someone had shot me in that moment, I would have kept running for another half hour. I was that panicked and fear-drenched. A second time that I turned around to see if I had gotten away from the Dogman, he sped right past me, almost knocking me down in the process. Once this giant got in front of me, I craned my neck back to look up into his eyes and to try to understand his intent. What I saw when I stared up into those glowing orbs was not hunger, nor was it anger. It was glee. He had me cornered. He had me locked in deep, terrified fear, and he was enjoying every second of it. Letting out some sort of a sound not entirely unlike a barking sound, he sent me back running in the direction I had been coming from. He was herding me. He was deciding for me which direction I would run. I was lost in those woods, unaware which way was north, south, east, or west. Was the Dogman as well? Or was he knowingly and deliberately herding me in one particular direction? The giant gray canine man would run ahead of me and run circles around me, but then fall back and return to chasing me. He could have tackled me down any time he wanted. My fear and agony seemed to be his entertainment, or even his food. He seemed to be toying with me. Maybe he wanted me to run and run until I tired myself out. Then I'd be easy pickings for the Dogman. I was so revved up with fear and adrenaline that I was willing to take my chances, that I could try to just run forever. I had forgotten that we were running around in a forest on the top of a cliff. I had forgotten that running forever isn't an option when you're on land way up in the sky. Sooner or later, you're gonna reach the edge of that cliff, and then you're gonna run out of real estate very suddenly. That's basically what happened to me that night. I ran toward a lighter part of those woods, thinking there must be a clearing on the other side. Maybe there would be people in that clearing. Maybe I would be safe if I could get into a crowd of others. I motored toward that clearing, but when I got there, I realized with shocking suddenness that there were not only not trees in that clearing, there was no ground either. Looking down, I saw that I was about to leap off that cliff. In fact, I was about to run at top speed off that cliff, and my head reflexively turned downward. I saw the ground running out, and I saw the tide beating against the large rocks far below. I also, in that split second, saw a deeper pool of water underneath me, in only a slightly different angle to my right. Using my last few running steps to correct my course, I ran out of those woods, off of that cliff, leaping to my right, and praying that my momentum would carry me past those boulders and into the water, where it would be safer to land. Well, I smashed up on the rocks and died that night. This is my ghost telling you this story now. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, I made it. I don't know how deep the water was that I landed in, but the force of my momentum drove me so deep into it that my feet touched the bottom before I swam back up for air. I'll tell you another sensation I had as I was landing in the water and sinking momentarily to the bottom. I sensed another big splash in the water to my right. It happened a second or two or three after my splashdown. At the time, I thought it was the Dogman, and I was frantically looking around for him as I held my breath and swam back up to the surface. Then, once my head got back above water and I was gasping air, I was still looking around for the Dogman. I didn't see him on my level in the water. I didn't see him up on top of the cliff either, but that didn't mean he wasn't up there. I have no idea to this day if he made the leap with me or not. It's possible that the other splash I heard was rocks or dirt that I may have dislodged when I jumped. Maybe it was just parts of the cliff that I accidentally brought down with me. If it was that Dogman, then he must have either hit his head on the way down or swam away very quickly, because I never saw him anywhere, ever again. I'm lucky I survived. It was a miracle that I didn't even have any broken bones. Whenever I remember this story, I shake all over. Chills go through me when I think of how many ways I could have not survived the time that Dogman chased me right off a cliff. Thanks, Biggie, and thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos, or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com, or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.